In this video lesson, we are going to be working through Lesson 17, Understanding Vocabulary and Literary Text. This will be page 274, 275, and 277. The catfish. Looking at the bottom right corner, I'm going to go ahead and read the closed reader habits. How does the poet describe the catfish? Reread the poem. Underline words and phrases that explain how he imagines a catfish to look. So the first time I read through the poem, I'm not going to underline anything. We will then reread it and underline words and phrases. Because it is a poem and I can see that there are small numbers next to two of the words, I want to go ahead and read the definitions provided at the bottom so that I know what those words mean once I read through them. So feline means cat-like, and vitriol and vichy is an acid and an old word for mineral water. They are dangerous to mix. So reading through the poem on page 274, the catfish. The saddest fish that swims the briny ocean, the catfish I bewail. I cannot even think without emotion of his distressful tale. When with my pencil once I tried to draw one, I dare not show it here. Mayhap it is because I never saw one. The picture looked so queer. I vision him half feline and half fishy, a paradox in twins. Unmixable as vitriol and vichy, a thing of fur and fins. A feline Tantalus, forever chasing his fishy self to rend. His finny self forever self-effacing in circles without end. This tale may have a moral running through it, as Aesop had in his. If so, dear reader, you are welcome to it, if you know what it is. So, referring back to the closed reader habits on the bottom of page 274, it says, how does the poet describe the catfish? Reread the poem. Underline words and phrases that explain how he imagines a catfish to look. So we're going to reread the poem and underline different things, words and phrases to explain how he imagines a catfish to look. The saddest fish that swims the briny ocean, the catfish I bewail. So there's nothing in those first two lines that tell us anything about how the catfish would appear. I cannot think without emotion of his distressful tale. I will underline the fourth line of the poem because it says that he has a distressful tale. And because of the way tale is spelled, T-A-I-L, I know that it is the tale of it, not a tale like a story. When with my pencil once I tried to draw one, I dare not show it here. Again, nothing in those two lines tell me how the catfish would look. Mayhap it is because I never saw one. The picture looked so queer. I vision him half feline and half fishy. I will underline that. Half feline and half fishy. A paradox in twins. Unmixable as vitriol and vichy. A thing of fur and fins. So telling me how he looks, a thing that has fur and fins. A feline Tantalus, forever chasing. So feline Tantalus, forever chasing, his fishy self to rend. His finny self forever self-effacing in circles without end. This tale may have a moral running through it, as Aesop had in his. If so, dear reader, you are welcome to it if you know what it is. So this poem can be a little tricky because it mentions someone who's in Greek mythology. So we're going to have to go over that and figure out who that is and how it relates to our passage, our poem. So looking at page 275 on the back, it says, use what you learned from reading the lyric poem to respond to the following questions. Over here, the character says, If a phrase mentions a character from mythology, you may need to look beyond the text to find information about it. So in this poem, it mentions Tantalus, but it doesn't tell us who or what that character is. So there may be a question where that comes up and we need more information that is not provided. So starting with number 1, in the poem, one word has this definition: to cry out in sadness or pain. Underline the word that best fits the definition in the following lines from the Catfish. The saddest fish that swims the briny ocean, the catfish I bewail. I cannot even think without emotion of his distressful tale. So rereading this definition, to cry out in sadness or pain, the word that in this stanza or within these 4 lines that has that definition would be bewail. So I'm going to go ahead and underline that. Bewail means to cry out in sadness or pain. And if we plug that definition into the line, you'll see that it makes sense. The saddest fish that swims the briny ocean, the catfish, to cry out in sadness or in pain. I cannot even think without emotion of its distressful tale. Moving on to number 2, read the lines from the poem. I vision him half feline and half fishy, a paradox in twins, unmixable as vitriol and vichy. What is the meaning of paradox as it is used in the poem? So we're looking for the meaning of paradox. A creature with parts that don't seem to go together. B, a furry fish with a brother that looks just like him. C, a scaly cat that is confused and spins around. D, a make-believe animal that has 2 different heads. So again, we're going to look within these 3 lines from the poem to see if there's any context clues provided. I vision him half feline and half fishy, a paradox in twins, unmixable as vitriol and vichy. So here it says, I vision him half feline and half fishy. And what we know about a feline or a cat and a fish is that they don't really go together. So the correct answer here would be A, a creature with parts that don't seem to go together. Number 3, reread lines 13 through 14. Tantalus is a criminal in a Greek myth. He is punished by keeping delicious food and drink forever just out of his reach. Why does the poet describe the catfish as a feline Tantalus? Use the chart on page 277 to organize your ideas about the poem. So we're going to go back to lines 13 and 14, which would be these 2 that we have already underlined. A feline Tantalus forever chasing his fishy self to rend. So why would the poet describe the catfish as a feline Tantalus, knowing that Tantalus is a criminal in Greek mythology? He is punished by keeping delicious food and drink forever just out of his reach. So use that to start thinking about why the poet would describe the catfish as a feline Tantalus. If we go to page 277, this is the chart that we're going to use to organize our ideas. Use the chart below to organize your ideas. The unknown word here in line 13 and 14 is Tantalus. So, as mentioned before, when it mentions a character from Greek mythology, you may need to look beyond the text for information about it. So nowhere in our text did it provide the information that Tantalus is a criminal in Greek mythology and he is punished by keeping delicious food and drink forever just out of his reach. In our poem, it doesn't mention that. However, it is provided beyond the text. So returning to page 277, with our unknown word being Tantalus or character. Context in the poem. So how is it used in the poem? Again, referring right back to the text. It says, a feline Tantalus forever chasing. So we're going to write that in context in poem. A feline Tantalus forever chasing. So using what we know about Tantalus as a character in Greek mythology and what we know about how the author feels a catfish would look, the possible meaning that we could come up with for Tantalus could be that it is a cat that can't reach its food. So we're going to write that in, possible meaning, cat that can't reach its food. Because we know Tantalus cannot reach the food. And then the clues that helped get me to that possible meaning was the information that was provided in question 3. He is punished by keeping delicious food and drink forever just out of his reach. So that's what I'm going to write in as my clues. He is punished by keeping delicious food and drink forever just out of his reach. So my unknown word or character was Tantalus. Context in the poem, a feline Tantalus forever chasing. The possible meaning is a cat that can't reach its food, because the clues that were provided in question 3 were he is punished by keeping delicious food and drink forever just out of his reach. Going back to page 275, number 4 says you use details from the poem and your discussion to explain why the poet calls the catfish a feline Tantalus. Use the space provided on page 277 to write your response. Hint, think of what you know about a cat's usual reaction to a fish. So again, guys, don't forget you can pause this video whenever you need to throughout. So going to the bottom of page 277, this is the same exact question as on page 275. Short response, use the space below to write your answer to the question on page 275. Use details from the poem and your discussion to explain why the poet calls the catfish a feline Tantalus. And think of what you know about a cat's usual reaction to a fish. So when they say use details from the poem and your discussion, this chart for number 3 is what they're referencing to as your discussion, because number 3 says to talk about it and to use the chart. So we're going to use information from the poem as well as information from our chart to answer the question on the bottom of page 277. So what we know about Tantalus is that he is punished by keeping delicious food and drink forever just out of his reach. So we're going to start off by rewording that and by saying Tantalus is punished by having food and drink kept just out of his reach. So we're explaining why the poet calls a catfish a feline Tantalus. Tantalus is punished by having food and drink kept just out of his reach. A feline Tantalus must mean a cat that can't reach its food. So you can see that I'm kind of working backwards through my chart for number 3. I started by explaining how Tantalus is punished, and then using my possible meaning for feline Tantalus. So far I have Tantalus is punished by having food and drink kept just out of his reach. A feline Tantalus must mean a cat that can't reach its food. So going back up to my chart, I did just realize I forgot to write feline Tantalus for my unknown word. So continuing with my written response, I want to use context clues from the poem to help support this. So I'm going to say, in the poem, the poet imagines going back to my poem, I can see here that the poet imagines that the catfish is half feline and half fish. So that's what I'm going to include. The poet imagines that a catfish has the head of a cat and the tail of a fish. Referring back to my hint, it says think about what you know. Think of what you know about a cat's usual reaction to a fish. So I'm going to finish off my response with that information. So because cats like to eat fish, the poet imagines the cat, again going back to the story, or the poem, a feline Tantalus forever chasing his fishy self to rend. So you can see even in the illustration that the fish is looking at his tail. The cat is looking at his tail. So because cats like to eat fish, the poet imagines that the cat is, sorry about that, the cat is forever swimming around, chasing its tail to eat it. So reading through my entire written response, Tantalus is punished by having food and drink kept just out of his reach. A feline Tantalus must mean a cat that can't reach its food. In the poem, the poet imagines that a catfish has the head of a cat and tail of a fish. Because cats like to eat fish, the poet imagines the cat is forever swimming around chasing its tail to eat it. So again, guys, that was iReady Lesson 17, Understanding Vocabulary and Literary Texts, page 274, 275, and 277. If you fell behind, now is a good chance for you to pause the video. And don't forget, I made that correction. Number 3, the unknown word was feline Tantalus, not just Tantalus. And then if you needed to pause it for number 4, there's also a good time to do so.